Here's his game against Magnus Carlsen. He's black in this one. Plays the Scandinavian, just as I did in our blitz games today. And then knight f6 instead of queen d5. On knight f3 from Carlsen, I was thinking to try bishop to g4 here in a third game, but Adhiban just played this, which I did, d4. And he put the bishop on g4 right away. In my game, I eventually put the bishop on g4. h3, bishop e2, knight c6, that's where I put that. So Magnus is not even going for c4. That's very interesting. I'm going to have to check whether or not c4 is good or not here. But just for the record, what Carlsen did is he castled and played c3. So he's just defending d4 against these two pieces, which could leave the knight awkward on c6. Just really strong pointing the point that black's going after. So before we get to that, though, I just want to try c4 once. I want to get a feel for this. So I would have played knight to b6. I wonder if knight to b4 is possible in this move order. And the point is here, 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 and here. If queen a4, c6, actually b5 is fine too. And even more forcing, b5 wins here, I think. Well, it's not guaranteed that it wins. It could be messy. It could be quite messy. No, it wins. Yeah. Okay, here. No, knight a3. I mean, this is still, even though you force the white knight to a3, this is still potentially terrible for black because it's hard to break with e6. White has, you know, queen b3 and knight b5 as ideas, and castling and a strong pawn on d5. This looks just good for white to me, actually. I'm going to say that's good for white. So probably that just refutes knight b4. Yeah, just with knight a3 here. Okay. So c4, let's say he plays knight b6 like I sort of did. Then this is the position we had. We actually did fine as black here. In that one game, we actually got an okay position. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how white really challenges black in this position. It's true that trying to defend d4 is kind of annoying. Although if he plays bishop e3... Oh, here's the thing. If he plays bishop e3, like in my game, since the bishop's already out here, black can take on f3 in this early move order. And then on bishop takes, there's knight takes. So, yeah, so that's already just kind of an annoying threat. And on d5... then presumably it would go kind of like in the game. This trade, if you ever take on c6, the bishop can retreat and leave black ahead a pawn. At worst, if there's not even something even worse than that. And then here the knight comes to e5. And yeah, these positions, black usually has enough. White spent so much time pushing the pawns, but not really achieving anything as far as like limiting the black pieces. So, So Carlsen chooses to just castle and play c3. And Adhiban just develops bishop e7. And here, I mean, it's not so obvious how to aggressively develop this knight and bishop. I suppose one way to play would be rook e1, knight d2, knight c4. Carlsen doesn't go for that, but that's how Adhiban handled his game against Van Welly as white, with a similar position with this pawn on c5. So, I mean, if we're looking for an improvement on what Carlsen did, this would make sense to me as far as developing the white pieces. Bring this knight to c4. And yeah, once the knight comes to c4, you've got kind of nice control here, making it hard for black to play e5. You're also stopping knight a5. You can follow up with queen b3 maybe. And then bishop d2, rook d1. You can also play knight c4, a4, a5. Gain some space on the queen side. Or at some point with knight on c4, you could play g4, bishop g6, knight to e5, and just get the bishop pair. So this is definitely like an acceptable other approach to the game. It's the one that actually makes sense to me here. But let's quickly look at what Carlsen actually did, which is knight e5, forcing some piece trades. Knight e5 was played. Why not bishop e2? Let's just check here. Anything wrong with this for black? Nope, absolutely not. Black's fine. Because here, you know, equal material, and then just break with c5. And black's good. He's ahead in development, and his position's totally good. So bishop e2, I guess it would just be queen e2. That doesn't seem to pose any problems for black, does it? Takes. I'm not sure why. But I guess he's going for this, and then maybe like a cramp and the d file. Because I'm going to say if queen e5, it's like really, really a very minimal attempt at advantage by white. Really not dangerous or impressive looking. So maybe he's going for d5. But I'm tempted to say that white doesn't really have great prospects for an advantage here. But let's see if I'm wrong. So this is a kind of position that I sometimes evaluate wrong. So I want to check it. So like castling c4, say knight b4, rook d1, queen to e8, coming to c6 might make sense. A3 maybe. Grabbing more space with b4. Yeah, it's definitely possible that Carlsen wasn't looking for an advantage with white, but I'm looking for it for him anyway. And I would say that it makes sense to look for an advantage. Your opponent's played an unusual opening that's basically never played, based on the premise that it's probably sort of good for white. And also, Carlsen often plays for like a playable position instead of an advantage. So that might be like what you're referring to. He is okay with not always having an advantage. But one of the reasons he plays into like playable positions without an advantage instead of into some like very critical opening prep line trying to extract an advantage is because he's trying to avoid his opponent's opening prep and force them to just play with him. But here Adhiban has already given him that favor of like playing outside of like really well-researched lines. So Carlsen's welcome to just play freely and also try to get an advantage. So there's no real reason for him not to try and get an advantage here with white. Like, I don't see any like strong incentive to play any subprime moves or anything here. So let's say like knight c6 or a6 and then b4, getting that space while we can. Rook to d8. Bishop b2. Here and here and here and here. I don't know, just making some move. Rook d8 and knight c3 and rook d4. Yeah, I mean, this just didn't quite work out for white. I mean, I almost kept black cramped, but then they just came to the d file too fast before I could move this knight and avoid like issues on d4. I don't really have a great way to develop this knight. You know, if I play here, there's knight e5 possibly, very likely. I don't know where I'm supposed to move my queen so that on rook to d8 I can, you know, keep the knight out of d4 and develop this piece. Maybe I could have just played like this actually. And then here I come to e4. And I keep the pieces on the board, right? And then now I've covered this, and yeah. Still, I mean, black just has the d file. I don't know that they're gonna like be in trouble here. On g4, they'll play knight h4. It looks like a losing try instead of a winning try. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not achieved anything. So let's go back here. Maybe just leave the knight here. I was trying to gain some space for white here to keep black from quickly playing queen c6. Maybe that doesn't matter. Let's just develop a piece. Play a simple move. Respond with a simple move for black. Either queen c6 or rook d8. Maybe queen c6 isn't desirable because it actually justifies a3 and b4 and stuff. So okay, I'll just play rook to d8 for now, and then bishop f4 for white. Looks okay for black. I don't really see what white's got here. I guess we can send this guy over here, see if that does anything. Now it kind of does a little bit. Play a5, but then there's knight b5. It's nice, weirdly awkward on this square. But this should be playable for black. This should be overall playable. I guess knight b5 is going to be annoying at some point. Maybe I should just play a6 to stop knight b5 and just defend as black. You know, this knight will come to c6. We'll trade rooks at some point, play queen to e8 and rook to d8. Or perhaps just right away. With the idea of just rook d8 next move. It doesn't seem like anything noticeable for white. I don't know. So I would be tempted to answer Adhiban's opening with this plan. Rook e1, knight d2. I'm not allowing an easy e5 for black. I'm trying to leave the knight on c6 a little bit misplaced because they don't have c5. And I'm just developing some new pieces. You know, my rook's on its best square, and my knight's coming to either e4 or c4, which are both decent squares. This is how I would try to handle Adhiban's Scandinavian. But Magnus himself, like, definitely didn't really get anything out of it. So he played knight e5, and here Adhiban, I think, could take on e2, but just does this instead, giving up the bishop pair. Magnus immediately strikes the light squares. Then he doesn't play bishop f3. It's weird. I would think that now you like are very happy to have this bishop. Let's see, why does he do this? Queen a4, all for a pawn. Oh, he did get himself a pawn. Uh-oh. What did he... What did he do for this pawn? Oh my goodness. Queen h2. I mean, rook h3 seems playable. Goodness. Oh. What's he planning here? Rook h3. Threatening rook g3 probably. Bishop f4. Queen d8 or something. Takes, d5. Messy. So he simply plays this. Carlsen keeps his extra pawn for a moment. Adhiban just castles. He's threatening rook a8, rook to b8, trapping the queen. Queen comes out, b5, takes. Guess here. I mean, you'd like to play b3 here. Once he plays cb5, black has a lot of positional compensation for the pawn. There's like no way that black could be worse here. And in fact, I think Adhiban got the advantage soon after. So that's what I had in mind, Gumersindo. So let's go look at that. b3, bishop b6, queen e5. But then I was thinking there might be a problem here. So like this move, queen e2, e5, and c5 is the critical thingamajigger here. Maybe I should have traded pawns once so that the rook's file would be open at this point. But by now the knight's hanging and all that. Okay, so here's the right time to do it. We can trade. Now we go knight g4. Now queen to e2 or queen to e4. We can come back if it matters which one we play. e5. So this is hard to defend, and there's this behind it. Although bishop e3 might also be playable, but what I was worried about was just c5. The queen's attacked by the rook and has to stay on the knight. This knight comes here. I think here white's kept their extra pawn. So I'm not pumped about this position here for black. I think you know, white's pawn is okay, this pawn's okay. This knight has this square, this bishop can come out here or somewhere. You know, queen e5 loses to bishop f4 and taking out b8. So b3. Somehow kicking the queen over here doesn't seem to really help. Okay, I got an interesting idea. What about rook d8 here? The idea is to threaten bishop b6 and just taking this pawn. And meanwhile, I mean, you're happy to still see cb5, right? That doesn't help white, nor does it stop that kind of a threat. And white's goal is to keep this pawn anyway. So we're trying to attack here, and if bishop e3, my idea is to now play bishop b6, hitting here, and then on queen e5 to play knight g4 now. But maybe this is silly. I mean, I don't see why this should be so good for me. Here. E5 is complicated, but I don't think it does anything special. I'm not quite seeing why b3 couldn't be played here. this again. This. Here. Try this move. This move. Take. This. Probably forcing c5. And then look at this position. Is this anything that black particularly wants? It still looks playable, but it's not like obvious either. Not obvious why this would be good enough for black. Crazy. Overall, I would say though, I mean, I don't like this approach by Carlsen. It was so risky. I don't even see what was wrong with rook takes h3 for black. Back here, just taking this pawn. It's hard to see why Carlsen thought these positions would be good for him. And I mean, even though I'm not finding anything like concrete for black after b3 to like refute b3, I'm not feeling like white's position is amazing either. Okay, I'm going to try one more thing here. I'm going to try bishop d6. Queen here. And bishop e4. So now, my point is that whichever defense white does, there might be something that gets left hanging. Wow, I can't even click anymore. Okay. All right, like here there's this one. Probably I should throw in b takes c4 just to open up my rook and defend this piece with an extra piece, and then queen d4. This should be good for black. Or I mean, good, like totally clearly at least equal. And then the other way to defend the knight over here, here my idea doesn't quite work. This is, yeah, Lansdorn, this is similar to bishop a5 from the initial position. I wanted to do this thing and threaten the bishop, and then if the bishop's defended, I just wanted to take it. The problem is, and this is why I didn't play bishop a5 in the original position, as you suggest, is I didn't want to be on this line here. And now we got to try and make this thing work out. I wonder if the rook on the second rank would be like enough to bother white here to get compensation. There's an immediate threat, g4. Yeah. Me too, Jimmy Carlsen. I mean, these positions are like super hard to analyze with confidence. Oh, but maybe there's a good trick with your bishop a5 move. I hadn't seen this before, but now I'm seeing something here. So on bishop to d2 or d2, bishop to anywhere too, takes and takes, knight e4, queen here. Now there could be this, but he still just takes it. And that doesn't work out that well, yeah. Sorry. I don't think that does anything great either. So it's not totally, nothing totally clear appearing to me at this point. So, but I would say I don't think that Carlsen got a good position in general. I don't like his idea of going and grabbing that a pawn with his queen. And I feel like the way to play this position as white is probably what I suggest with rook a1, castles, knight d2. This is like the logical, like, don't trade pieces, don't let black play e5. Just leave him with this knight sort of like suffering here, unable to move his c-pawn or his e-pawn. That's definitely like 100% what I suggest for this position so far. Now we've got some more games of Adhibans to get to, and we're running low on time, so